Welcome back to Click to Buy. I'm your host, Becca, joining you from Instant Page Builder, and today we're joined by Christine Corbin, a CRO and SEO consultant who has made a name for herself in the fashion and beauty space. After working with top women's wear and fine jewelry brands, Christine transitioned to self-employment in 2020, where she now helps small, sustainable brands build their online presence and increase sales. In today's episode, we're going to dive into exactly what's going to make your landing pages truly high converting, drawing on Christine's expertise in both CRO and SEO. She'll be sharing real-world examples and case studies that showcase conversion success and even audit a Shopify fashion or beauty store live today on the show. So if you're a brand listening in that's looking to boost your online performance, stick around for tips that you can put into action right away. Well, Christine, first of all, welcome to Click to Buy. It's so great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Becca. I'm so happy to be here.
Absolutely. Well, there are so many topics that I would love to pick your brain on, but I would love to just kind of first, let's give our audience a little bit of a background because I know you, but it'd be great for them to understand, like, how is it that you've come to this point in your career that you are today? So I would love if you could tell me, you've had this impressive career in the fashion and beauty industries. What's motivated you to move into like this self-employment, and how has that shaped the way that you approach both CRO and SEO today?
Yeah, absolutely. I started my career at a series of much smaller brands. And I really loved the experience of working with smaller companies because you just get to wear so many hats in an environment like that. You get to do so many different things and touch so many different areas. So my last corporate job was actually at quite a large jewelry company in New York pre-pandemic, and probably in a familiar tale to a lot of your listeners, I was actually laid off along with 70% of the company. But at the time, I had already started taking on freelance marketing projects on the side. I was really interested in having a more like mobile lifestyle. I love to travel. And like I said, I love getting to work on like lots of different things at once. And so I found it really satisfying to get to kind of like learn more about these companies and feel like I was really making a difference more so for like smaller brands. So then it kind of just transitioned really naturally to where I don't know that I would have taken that plunge so fast if left to my own devices. But the next thing I knew, I was kind of seamlessly moving into self employment. And now it's been 4 years. I guess almost 5 years at this point. Time really flies. Yeah, and I love it.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, congratulations. It sounds like you really took a moment that could have been high adversity and turned that into quite the opportunity. So I think so many people listening in who are like e-com store founders or entrepreneurs or even just people in marketing, like you might be presented these moments where you have to decide if you're going to make the jump. So really
Yeah.
cool to hear the story of someone who had that moment that lots of people had in 2020 and has now turned that over the last few years into a whole kind of new part of your career. So that's super exciting to hear.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that might have a familiar story to a lot of us in the industry. I know for my friends in New
Mhm.
York, it was like really crazy time.
Absolutely. Well, now you're helping all sorts of companies in this space. And I would love to just like start with the basics. So, in your
Mhm.
experience, what are the key elements that are going to make a landing page truly highly converting?
Totally. And I think it's so good to say we're getting back to the basics because I think
Mhm.
a lot of people with landing pages can really overcomplicate things. And I think like the most important thing to kick us off is every landing page needs to serve like one primary purpose. So obviously, since we're talking ecom, I'm sure the majority of the time, that purpose is going to be to make a sale.
Mhm.
But equally, it could be to get customers to take a quiz so that you can get their email, or to get them to sign up for your newsletter so that they can redeem a gift with purchase. Um, Either way, whatever the point is of your landing page, you want to make that design and copy so simplified and so clear as to what the end action is. And I think before we get into any like nitty gritty tips, I just think people need to pull back and say, like, what do I want to accomplish with this landing page? And like, let's make it as simple as possible for the customer to do that. Like, so let's not give them multiple CTAs. Let's give them one point of action, and all the info we provide and all the copy we provide is all pointing to that end destination.
Absolutely. I love that you're really talking about like that focus and making it easy for that customer to have that like seamless journey. I'm really curious if in your experience there's any like tips in particular you can give to brands like in the beauty space when it comes to designing these pages, maybe something that's different from other industries you've encountered.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like the building blocks, in my opinion, for an e-com landing page are very similar across all industries. We want to see product badging, what makes this product different. We want to see really clear information above the fold about like exactly what the promotion or offer is that we're aiming for.
Mhm.
And we always want to see, like, if at all possible, user reviews and social proof. But I think for beauty specifically, the importance of social proof in UGC becomes even more critical, because these are products that are going to be so personal for a user. Like, you're literally putting them on your body.
Yeah.
um, so you really want to emphasize how these products work in a real world way. And I think Glossier does a great job of that on their website, for example. Almost any of their
Mhm.
product pages are so gorgeous they could almost be a landing page, but they always make a point to show products on um, real people or influencers, and like with multiple skin tones in use
Mhm.
via GIFs. And I think for beauty, that's just so critical. You have to have it.
Absolutely. I love that you've described like the main issue that people have when they're buying beauty or fashion things online, which is like, what's it going to look like on my
Yes.
body and my skin tone or the way I'm shaped? Like, it might be so different from other people. So that therein lies the challenge that I think many brands have to kind of master when they're making their designs.
Absolutely. And with fashion, the one thing I'll add
Uh-huh.
is, because I was more specified to beauty.
Of course,
With
yes.
fashion, make sure you're showing movement of the garment or the accessory or whatever. Like, have a GIF or a video that shows how the garment actually moves, because I think that can be, especially these days since everything is so saturated with like fast fashion. I'm assuming I'm
Mhm.
talking to like smaller brands who might be a bit more up to par with their production processes, and you really want to show people, yeah, like, what are they getting, how's it going to feel on their body. And it's very hard to do that online without showing that movement.
Absolutely. That's a great tip as well. I feel like that's why you see in some online stores like that little like catwalk video or you're
Yeah.
showing off the shoe, walking around with it.
Yeah,
Like these kind of mirror how if you were in a dressing room trying something on, you would want to like check it out on yourself. But since you can't do that,
totally.
of course there's a solution. So thanks for that tip that already kind of gives, I think, a nice baseline, which is I cannot wait for this kind of next exciting part. I would love to take a look at a real Shopify fashion site or beauty site with you so we could look at some areas for improvement that we could use for maybe better conversions or better experience. You are the expert, so I'd love for you to take it away and share a site that you feel like we can find some areas for improvement on, or maybe something that's going really well.
Awesome. Yeah, the brand that I'm going to share, I think there's a mix. There's definitely some great stuff we
Okay.
can highlight. So let's jump into it. So this brand, for those who aren't familiar, is called Marcella. They're like a mid-tier women's wear brand that are based out of New York, and they bill themselves as being like also a more sustainable option. Everything is produced in Europe. So I personally am a fan of this brand, and I think their site is doing some things right.
Mm-hmm.
But I certainly think there's room for improvement as well. So, starting off, I'm going to audit this site on mobile. Reason being, the majority of customers who access your e-com site at this point are going to be jumping in on mobile. That's true for like almost everyone at this point. Obviously, monitor your own analytics, but in 9 times out of 10, we should care a bit more about mobile. Um, so the first thing I'm seeing, I like that there's a clear CTA on this hero image. It says shop section sale. That gives me as a customer a clear call to action of what I'm actually on this site for.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also some copy at the bottom that says minimalism with an edge, ethical and sustainable. Now, I'm getting some sense of what this brand is about. If I'm a brand new customer, I do think that this copy could be tweaked a bit to be a bit more impactful. But I'm at least, if I'm a brand new customer drop tier, I have some understanding there is a sale. These are sustainable pieces. Now, what I would immediately consider doing differently if I were Marcella is I would potentially want to shrink the size of the CRO image so that there's shoppable product visible above the fold. What I really want to encourage in users as they land on a site is that desire to start scrolling and learn more. And when you have an image that takes up the entire page, you're not really like activating that desire and curiosity to keep browsing. So that's like a small tweak, but I see this a lot on the collection page level as well. And it can just be really impactful to give customers, especially on mobile, a little peek at like what they're actually browsing.
I think that's already some great tips there. Like, indeed, you see here, I can imagine someone clicked on like a meta ad, they saw this sale, they get here, but then it
Yeah.
looks, indeed, you just see this beautiful picture of the product. But if you just had that shoppable product right below, I might even have a better idea of what is the section sale, like what products are included.
Absolutely. And as an aside, since this is a Shopify
Uh-huh.
site, like this
Uh-huh.
is quite easy to do in Shopify. You don't need to be a graphic designer to be able to make edits like this, just FYI. Something
Love
for
it.
everyone to look at. So now I'm going to pivot over to this brand's menu. The customer journey, especially for fashion and beauty, is so critical because most of the time when we're buying clothes, it's not necessarily a need. Like we're browsing a little, we want to see what the store has, even if we know like the type of thing we need. Like let's say we need leggings, we want to see what the options are. And it's not like necessarily like how you shop on Amazon, where you go, you type one specific thing in the search bar, and then you just go buy it. Not an Amazon fan for the record, but we work differently on independent fashion and beauty sites. So it's really important to look at your menu optimization and make sure it's as easy as possible for people to get to shoppable products very fast. So on this menu, I like that it doesn't take up the full screen. I like that I can still easily pivot out as a consumer if I want to go back to the homepage. But what I don't necessarily like is I think there's a few too many categories here. So for people who can't see, there's a new category, there's a bestsellers category, then you go to clothing, shoes, and bags, but then there's also an edits category and a sale category. In my opinion, this is something Marcella could A B test, and they could try narrowing down these categories to be much more slimmed down. So, like, I'm not opposed to you highlighting bestsellers, although I don't know why you need an edits and a bestsellers.
Yeah.
And I'm not opposed to you highlighting sale products, but I just don't know that all these need to be represented on this main menu. I think that you want to at the point of the menu make things so simplified that a customer should almost like not have to think about it. And now I'm thinking, what is edits versus bestsellers? And I shouldn't
Yeah.
be thinking that.
True. I think like right here, you could see new, I guess, would be great for returning customers. But if I'm like really a new visitor, like I want to be like, maybe check out the bestsellers, or maybe I was looking for a specific thing in either clothing or shoes and bags, or maybe the sale. But yeah, it does feel like there's a lot going on.
Absolutely. And I think this is an opportunity also to use at the collection page level, use product badges. So, like, let's click over to a collection. Instead of having a new category at the menu, at the point of the menu, you could, and I see they actually have this here once I click through, they have a product labeled with a badge that says new colors. I think that you
There
should
you go.
absolutely share this information, and returning customers do want to know that, but you are potentially overwhelming brand new shoppers at the menu level. Um, Also, as I click through here, I'm pretty happy with this mobile view. As you can see, there's shoppable products visible, including the price and different colorways. Happy about that. I do think that there's like a bit much going on. There's like a sale banner that reads ends at midnight, 15% off all athleisure, but it's also flashing at the very top of the page. And there's like a second banner at the top of the page that reads ethical, sustainable, socially impactful. Like there's just a lot going on. And I'm happy that overall the site feels pretty minimal, but I think we could continue to pare down here and just like not overwhelm customers at this stage.
Absolutely. There's a lot of different things going on. And like, I feel like so many brands like this, at some point, there's going to be like an overlay that pops up or something else that's taking up the viewport. So it's like the more you can direct people exactly where they want to go, the better you are.
Absolutely. And like, there's obviously nothing wrong with reiterating sales that are happening. I mean, I
True.
think, consumers, we're all forgetful. We all have like zero point zero 0.05 second attention spans. But I just do always want to balance that with like really simple design that like doesn't overwhelm people and doesn't detract from the product. So like if I were this brand, I'd probably just limit the sale to that top flashing banner, and I'd probably remove the second banner. And then for any products that are discounted, I would just do the like slash through pricing that indicates exactly how much a customer is going to save. This collection page is for tops and tunics, so it's not athleisure. So I just think this isn't the point where I would continue to reiterate that specific info since we already have the flashing banner.
True, because if they came to this page, they're not maybe interested in athleisure. They're looking for that top or tunic.
Exactly. Yeah. So the other thing, as I was poking around the site before our call, that I really wanted to highlight, let me click through to a product page. Like, let's assume that we're customers and we're going to make the sale, or we're considering making the sale. So what I will say is I do like that they have a floating add to cart button on the product page. It disappears when you come to the actual add to bag button, which is fine because then if you continue to scroll, it comes back. I think this is a great idea. You should make it as easy as possible for people to add your product to their cart. So I think the floating button or like a stagnant button on the bottom of the screen, either way, make sure that people never have to go reorient themselves on the product page to add your product to the cart. This is a really good idea. And I do believe most Shopify themes make this relatively easy to do at this point. But I still encounter a lot of sites that don't do it. So don't forget.
I think that's a great tip and definitely something that people can think of, especially if you're thinking for mobile optimization tips on your pages. Like, I think that's a great one because it's like so much more annoying to scroll up so many times with your finger on your smartphone.
Yes. And like product pages are where you should be storing all that nitty gritty information that people need to find, like like sizing information, shipping concerns. Obviously, like you have the upsell sections, you have information on the fabrication of the product, and like all that's fine, but you need that, and people should be able to find that on the product page level. But it can result in really long pages. So that just does make those kind of floating buttons even more critical because this is the page level where you get into the nitty gritty and you just want to keep it as simple as possible, always to like reorient back to the top, find the price, find the add to cart button. So then if I click into the mobile menu, I find this to be a bit busy. So for people who can't see the screen, there's like still a floating banner. It's neon green this time and it says ends midnight, 15% off all athleisure. There's like an option to add an order note. There's a flashing memo about a free tote that you get if you order 200 plus. And then there's like a people also bought section. And then at the bottom, I find a checkout button and I also find a send as a gift button. So what I would recommend for this brand is I would want to really simplify this screen. First of all, I'd like it to not be full screen. I'd like it to match the mobile menu and give you an option to easily click out if you're still browsing. I know there's an X up top, but I just think for mobile, I try to avoid full screen pop-ups as much as humanly possible. And at a minimum, A/B test it, see what works for your audience. I'd also say like, let's nix the add order note and nix send as gift at this stage. You can include those details when the customer actually gets to checkout, but like you just don't need this level of information at the cart screen. And if you got rid of those, it gives you more room on this view to show upsell products. And also it just like helps reduce visual overwhelm. So that's what I do. And I'd also remove the free tote with your order info. And honestly, I just automatically give it to customers if they get to $200. And if anything, I might just have it flagged as a little header, but it's just taking up a lot of room. Our order is nowhere near $200. It's at $120. Like it's taking up a lot of space where you could show more upsells. So maybe not remove it entirely. Like again, we would want to A/B test all these theories, but I would make it much smaller and just keep it as like a line of copy and be like, hey, you need to spend X more dollars. Give them a countdown for how much they should spend rather than taking up half the screen with this tote offer that they may not want to meet. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely. I think you have a really good point there about like trying to think. It really goes back to what you said at the beginning of this conversation, which is like simplify the journey. So I've just added this to my cart. Now is the moment to try to increase that AOV by saying like complete the outfit. Here's what you could also buy. And then, oh, now I'm getting close to 200. then have in the journey the
Yeah,
try to push for the tote.
absolutely. And there's so many Shopify apps now that help you
Yes.
do sort of countdown sales offers, things like this. So yeah, I think that would just be much more impactful here, is rather than saying you have to get 200 plus, you could say, oh, you're only 80 away from your free tote. Just one line of copy, give them the calculation, get them right to the upsells. Yeah, I think that'd be a lot smoother.
Absolutely. So then they really feel like they're getting like the big value out of it. Like, oh, I bought something else, which will complete like the main purchase. Plus I get the tote. Like, why would I not?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think obviously this has been a big theme, but I think it's
Yes.
just it's really simplifying throughout the site and just really thinking about the customer journey, and that's going to be so specific to each person's site. And again, like, you always want to be A/B testing. These are just theories that I have. I don't work on this site, and if I did, I would
Yes.
try these. But I think in general, a lot of sites could do really well with, like, yeah, paring down the customer process and making it just like as smooth as humanly possible. That is already going to set you up for success.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for auditing this site together. It was really interesting to see your take on what works, maybe what could be interesting to try if you're another brand, and also how you would approach it, like coming into this as like a site you don't currently work on, but if you were going to get started, kind of what you would attack.
Hire me, Marcella.
Yeah, yeah. Here's a little plug if you're listening and watching this. Seems like she
If you're
has,
listening, I like your clothes.
yeah, it seems like she has plenty that there could be offered there. So we'll make sure to tag them in the show notes so that they can see the brilliant ideas that you could bring to the table.
Thanks.
I love it. Well, I definitely want to pick your brain on a few other topics. So I
Mhm.
know that another thing that you're working on, like you've helped maybe some other brands with CRO or SEO or different landing page optimizations. Do you have any examples of any work you've done with like a client that there's been like a really significant change that made like a difference in their success?
Yeah, absolutely. So the things I just focused on in this audit tend to
Mhm.
be main areas that I work with for
Okay.
clients as well. I find that mobile menus specifically, and desktop menus as well, they're important. I just think they're not quite as important. But menu structure, I find, tends to be very overlooked, and oftentimes it can just be simplified so much. So I recently did work with another women's wear brand ahead of Black Friday, since we're all ramping up currently.
Yep.
um, and one thing we worked on that I work on with almost everyone is just like across the board, looking at site speed, which is something we haven't talked about yet. So we did a
Mhm.
general site speed audit. We cleaned up a lot of Shopify apps, and we also made a lot of adjustments to just page loading structure and making sure images were properly sized. So that was already in place. And then from there, we went into doing a deep dive into how customers actually interact with the mobile menu and how we could really pare it down so that the journey just like was a lot more intuitive. And a tool I like to use when I'm auditing something like that is a heat map tool like Hotjar or MS Clarity, where you can see how users are actually interacting with the menu and like where are they actually clicking. Like we just talked about with the Marcella site, I think that would be really helpful to see, like, yeah, do people respond well to the new category versus the sale category? Like, let's actually
Mhm.
find out. And then from there, we were able to pare down the journey to be a lot simpler and to get customers to shoppable products in less clicks, which is so critical. And they've already seen, it's been a couple months now, and they've already seen a conversion increase of around 0.4%, which is
Wow.
quite good actually.
Yeah,
Since,
absolutely. That's great.
yeah. So like site speed is something that affects everything, obviously. So like never forget that. But yeah, I just think that the menu journey is something that I love to focus on because it does feel like it's very often overlooked.
Thanks for sharing that example. And I think it just goes to show that sometimes if you really focus on those really basic elements of just having a really, really good site design, that's already going to work wonders for the performance of your online store.
Yeah, totally.
Also, great to hear some tool recommendations. We'll definitely link those in the show blog as well, because I know everyone listening is presented with lots of options for things that they can try all the time. So it's great to hear something that's recommended by someone who's been there and done that. Um,
Totally. And MS Clarity is
uh-huh.
completely free. Now, mind you, some people have concerns about Microsoft's like privacy stuff and AI stuff. So you follow your intuition on that. But I will say it's quite a good tool that is $0 as opposed to Hotjar, which is paid. But they both do a really similar thing, and they both work really well, and I'd recommend either.
Absolutely. So, like another topic related to site performance, of course, is SEO. So, I'm curious if you have any examples of like brands you've worked with where you've worked on like the SEO of their store and how you kind of balance driving traffic and then trying to drive traffic that's actually going to convert.
Absolutely. So I think that the site speed point is a great example of where
Mhm.
CRO and SEO actually do converge. So obviously, having lightning fast pages is very important for CRO. That factor alone can really impact sites' conversion rates because if you think about it, like our attention spans are so low. If you click into a
Mhm.
site, especially on mobile, and it doesn't load for you, there's so many options now that you very well might just click out like immediately. And especially if it's a new brand. And
Yeah.
so that's really important for people to remember. But actually, something that people may not realize is that Google really cares about your site performance as well. So when you optimize for site speed, you're doing yourself a favor from an SEO perspective as well. And that can look like, yeah, removing unnecessary apps, making sure all the page elements are loading in the correct order. But it also looks like making sure your images are the right size. And Google really rewards sites that run properly. They love to see it. They prioritize site speed. It's not the main thing that's going to make or break your organic traffic, but it's like a quick way that you can help both. And the other thing I look at and notice a lot with SEO is um, clients don't always think about optimizing their URLs to be the most
Oh,
intuitive.
okay.
And that's something that really matters for Google as well. Um, but URL structure, like, it's not going to be the most important from a customer facing perspective, but like, you need to make sure your page, like if it's a collection page, it needs to have slash collections and then the collection that you're on. And that's just important because it shows Google how your site is actually set up and what kind of page they're actually looking at.
Mhm.
And that's going to be critical to make sure that they show the correct page types to people searching for your brand or for similar products. And along those lines, just make sure that your type of products are present in the URL and in your meta copy. Like, I worked with a high end handbag brand a couple of years back, and their clutches all had women's names. Like, one would be called like the Elena or something,
Yeah.
but none of their URLs actually had the word clutch anywhere. And same like in the site copy. And if you knew the brand, it would be obvious to you what you were shopping for. But Google can't be expected to know things like that. You have to help them along. So think about that URL structure. Think about, do I have the correct descriptive copy in the right places to where not only customers but also Google can find it?
Mhm.
That's just critical to get the right people to your page.
Absolutely. I'm just thinking about a brand of socks I saw the other day, which had like all of the benefits of the socks on the page, but it didn't say socks like once, you know? It
Yeah,
said like
yeah. No, it's
compression
amazing
or good
how
for
common
this.
that is.
So interesting to
Yeah.
hear that's a common kind of mistake in maybe fashion or like clothing. I could imagine you're so focused on like what's going to set this product apart that you do sometimes need to remember for SEO to remind Google what it is that you're selling.
And it's good for the customer as well because
Mm,
I think as brand owners, and I say this doing the same thing myself with my own
yeah.
company, we're so focused in the nitty gritty and we're like, well, obviously I do X, but you can't expect customers or Google to know that about you. And so obviously, if you're a customer and you're browsing and you can see pictures of a sock, you're like, okay, it's a sock. But
Hmm.
let's say you're using like an image to text tool because you're
Hmm.
differently abled and you can't access those images, like you might not know that those are socks unless the person has taken the time and effort to like properly optimize. And at the end of the day, that's better for people, but that's better for Google as well.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing all these tips. I love how you really brought together like how SEO and CRO can work together and how in the end it's really about making sure that people have like the best experience when they visit your online store. If they're coming from organic traffic or just if they're Googling, they're going to have the best experience if Google understands your site structure so they show them the best result. So I love how you kind of really tied it all together into something that can kind of really make sense in this nice package. So definitely so many tips in today's today's episode. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, although I'm sure we might have to have you back sometime because I already have like 10 million more questions I could ask you. But before I let you go, this is Click to Buy. So I always like to end the episode asking my experts for their click-worthy tip. So this is a short piece of advice or phrase or little expert insight that you can leave our listeners with that's unique to you and your experience on how they can improve their customer journey to turn those clicks into buys.
Absolutely. So this is going to tie right back into both SEO and CRO, like we were just talking about. But what I always recommend to people is make sure your product and collection pages have breadcrumb navigation. This is the copy at the top of the page that shows you how you navigated that page. So say you're on a blouse product page and it'll say like women's tops, blouses, or like just a string of words that let you know how you got there and let you easily click back in and out. So this is critical for customers because like we discussed, especially with fashion and beauty, people love to browse, they want to see their options, and people want to be able to click in and out easily. And especially on mobile, as you know, it can be very challenging to have to like manually back out. So not only is it great for customers, but it's actually really helpful for Google as well, because like I said, they really need to understand how your site is put together, and breadcrumb navigation helps them understand how pages relate to each other. So if you make sure all your pages have breadcrumbs, you're helping customers and you're helping Google. And I think that's just great.
I love it. And that is advice that I have not heard yet on an episode. So I love it. That's so unique. I love that every episode I'm just hearing something new. And I think that's something that's also super easy to implement. So anyone listening in, definitely give that a try. You heard that advice here first. But in case someone's listening in and they would love to hear more tips from you, or maybe they're like, Christine is the person who can help me fix up my beauty or fashion store, where can they find you online?
Absolutely. I'm not a big social media person, but I am on LinkedIn at Christine Corbin. You can find me there. Come say hello. I love to chat low hanging fruit CRO and SEO tips. And I also do lots of site audits. But also, I have a newsletter called Add to Cart, and it's an ecom newsletter that tends to focus on CRO and SEO, my two areas of expertise. And I release monthly site audits there, and as well as send out like news roundups and lots of tips. So you can access that on my website.
Absolutely. We'll make sure we've linked that in the show blog. Christine, thank you so much for being on Click to Buy today. That's a wrap. And again, a big thanks for sharing all your CRO and SEO tips for fashion and beauty brands. Once again, I'm your host, Becca Anderson, coming at you from Instant Page Builder. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, share it with all your fellow ecom enthusiasts. And until next time, keep turning those clicks into buys.